Welcome to the Unpackin' It podcast with Bryce Johnson. It's a show that unpacks sports, faith, and life with intriguing guests from the sports and entertainment world. Enjoy inspiring conversations and thought-provoking interviews. You'll hear stories from people that will inspire, challenge, and encourage you. Now, from the Unpackin' It studios in Charlotte, North Carolina, uniting sports fans everywhere, here is Bryce Johnson.
And joining us now is former Tennessee Titans linebacker Derrick Morgan. He spent 9 years with the Titans after being selected 16th overall in the 2010 draft. He spent his college career at Georgia Tech and is being inducted into their Sports Hall of Fame. He decided that 2018 was his final year in the NFL, and he joins us today on Unpacking It to discuss that decision, what he's up to next, and how God has changed his life. Derrick, thanks so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Well, before we jump into your story and what you're up to now, I'm just curious your thoughts on the first few weeks of the NFL season.
Oh, man. I'm probably not the best person to ask about that. I haven't watched the game.
Is that right?
Probably. Yeah, I just, I kind of got into a habit of not watching football throughout my career as just a way to almost disconnect when I was at home and, be present with the family. So I'm not really an avid football watcher. I'm sure, if it's on, I'll take a glance at it. But, I haven't really been tuned in this year.
Wow, that's interesting because I was going to ask you what it's like watching as a former player. So you've kind of avoided that. So what does that mean for kind of your relationships with your former teammates? And are you continued to stay connected with the Titans, or what does that look like?
There's a few guys I still keep in touch with, like Jarrell Casey, Wesley Woodyard, Daquan Jones. So it's like, every once in a while I'll shoot them a text, they'll shoot me a text, and then, we'll chop it up briefly. But I understand how it is in the season. You just don't have a lot of bandwidth. So I try not to bother the guys that are in season. But, it's been good. I've been really focused on, a lot of the stuff that I've been involved with off the field for the past few years. And so that's really taken up a lot of my time and focus. It's
very interesting. You made the decision to transition, and you're all in and fully focused. So we've got to talk about that. And so you don't like the word retirement. So you've transitioned out of the NFL and as a player. So take me back. How did you know it was time?
Oh man, I knew for a while. To be completely transparent, I knew. I had a strong feeling that this season was my last. Just the accumulation of the wear and tear on your body, the surgeries, just the mental tax that you take in playing the game, and not being able to completely decide what you do with your time, and not being around the family as much as you want, and me having more of an entrepreneurial spirit. It's hard for me to take orders from people and to say, you got to show up here at this time and do this and do it the way I want. And so for me, the more I was in the league, the more I kind of got privy to the business side of the NFL. It was like, let me just kind of exit on my own terms and put my time and energy into things that are, more meaningful to me. And so I knew 18 was going to be probably my last season. And for me, I wanted to leave on my own terms. I didn't want to take any pay cuts or get traded or get cut. So for me to be able to finish out both of my contracts and play 9 years is a big success for me, and I'm thankful that I had a chance to live out my childhood dream.
That's huge. Derrick Morgan, our guest right now on Unpacking It, former Tennessee Titans linebacker. So how did you approach your last season? What was that like? Just mentally and how you focused in on your final season last year.
It was challenging at times because it's like, in hindsight, it's like, man, you kind of think about like, dang, that was your last year. You got to cherish it, and which I did. But at the same time, when you're in the NFL, you have to devote everything to the game. It's you're all in. You can't be, halfway in, like straddling the fence you got to be all the way in. And being that it was year 9, like my body wasn't feeling the same, so I had to like put more time and energy into like keeping my body at a certain level. But at the same time, it's like, man, you're putting all this work in, knowing that you're going to be done with this in 4 months.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, you're investing so much of yourself into something that is coming to an end. So it's a hard thing to juggle. But for me, the thought that I, and the mandate that I live by was just being present, being in the moment, and taking advantage of, this time that I have, and really, being a good steward of what God blessed me with. And so even though a lot of me wanted to kind of like move on and be done with it, for me, it was more so like honoring the place in which I was at in my life, because I was there for a reason.
Wow. No, that's a great perspective from Derrick Morgan here on Unpacking It. And just in reading some of your articles and on the Players Tribune and that sort of thing, one thing stood out to me is you talked a little bit about this, and this is a big issue just in sports and in life as well, is identity and how our value can be attached to performance. And we know this in football specifically for you. Hey, however well you're playing, and that's your value, and that's what you get paid, and all that sort of thing. But you kind of recognized that a different perspective on that even as you were playing. So I'm curious, just kind of that process of what you learned about identity and how your faith affects that view. And then now, even as your career is over and that identity is gone, now you're a former player, no longer a current player. I'm just curious kind of your mindset on that whole topic.
Yeah, you have a kid who, most guys in the NFL have been playing the sport since they were 7, 8, 9 years old. That whole upbringing, at least for me, was, football was everything. And so it was like, you derive your sense of significance from football, your value. People paid attention to you because of football and all these things. It's such of a fleeting thing that for you to anchor your value and who you are as a man in that is dangerous, but it's something that is almost unavoidable. It's hard. So I would say, like, for me, I noticed it, when I got to the league my first year, I was out on IR after tearing my ACL. And I had a lot of people reaching out to me, a lot of people like prior to that, to say, hey, I want to come to a game, and, I want to blah, blah, blah. They wanted to be a part of the bandwagon. And I remember when I tore my ACL, I was sitting on the couch, icing my knee, and I got a text from one of my buddies back in my hometown. And it was like, hey, man, I'm coming down to the game next week. And I was like, oh, you must not have heard, I tore my ACL, I won't be playing. And he was like, oh, okay. Well, yeah, can I still get those tickets? For me, it was like, it really like was shocking, because it was like, I don't think people understand, like, when you have a season-ending injury, you're just kind of isolated from the team. And so I was going through a lot emotionally at the time. And for him, that guy to have like no like sense of awareness of what I was going through, or any empathy, or didn't really care, all he was focused on was the game. And that to me was so telling of a lot of people that were around me at the time. It was a lot of fake love. I was just like, there ain't no way I'm going to go through my career with all these fake people around me, and I'm not going to base any sense of significance in, what this game brings in terms of, the fake love and, the people being enamored and interested in what your success was. And so that to me was really a lot about understanding, what people were around me for, and what my value was outside of the game. And, I really didn't put too much stake in that as I progressed.
No, that's a fascinating thought to really consider, because you guys are in such a unique spot, and you feel like, man, people use you, and that's a tough thing. Derrick Morgan, our guest right now on Unpacking It. Appreciate you sharing that. I think it's worth people considering. And along similar lines, and even just this idea that you no longer really watch football, and I was reading about you too. You didn't necessarily like football at first when you were young, when you first started playing. Then you fell in love with it, and so now that it's over, what's your perspective on the game of football, the opportunity that you had to play football? Where does it kind of leave you?
It's a refiner, man. It matures you. It strengthens you. It tells you a lot about who you are as a person. It comes with joy, sorrow. It's complex. It has a lot to it.
Yeah.
The more you advance in your career. So I would say that certain people have a different opinion on this subject, that maybe people who didn't get to the league or just kind of stopped playing ball in high school, than those who went to Division I. And so it's like a different vantage point at every level. So when you get to the NFL, let me back up. When you get to college, like, you're still like in love with the game. And then, it's like for the love of the game. You're playing for the love, and the atmosphere in college is so much better than the league. And you got people just kind of like giving their whole heart. It's more team oriented. It's not like me type of thing. And so when you get to the league, you become very aware of the business of the NFL. And for me, the game, my relationship with the game started to change once I got to the NFL, really coming to the fact to say, this is a performance business, and it's a business at the end of the day. Yeah, you still love the game, but I didn't see this game do a lot of ill things to my friends and former teammates, and just because it's the nature of the NFL. I've seen guys get cut. I've seen guys have botched surgeries. I've seen, just disloyalty from a team when a guy is so loyal, from his view. And it's just a lot of the things that come with being a part of a corporation. It's not any different than, somebody working at an IBM or like a Microsoft. Like, there's just different things that come along with a corporation who is focused on the bottom line, right? Yeah. It's a part of that, and we're part of that system. We're commodities in that system. So for me, that was like a sobering part of my journey. And, not to take away from the love of the game, but the relationship became more business, more transactional almost. And it wasn't from the perspective of, I just love playing this game. Now it was like, I got to perform to get this amount of money to make sure my family's okay. And if I fall off in any way, shape, or form, then, I'm going to be in jeopardy of getting cut. And so it was just a whole new dynamic. And to say, like, I came in as a first-round pick.
True.
So my experience is way different than somebody who's like a fringe free agent guy and fringe roster guy and practice squad. They have a whole nother vantage point.
Yep.
And so I'm just kind of speaking from my experience, and I've known that I was blessed to be a first-round pick and have a different scenario. But I mean, it's even worse for guys that come in on lesser terms. So, the NFL is something that is, it's a business. I understand the business. I'm thankful that I had a chance to be a part of the NFL and live out my dream. But I would say my relationship with football has evolved over the years. And when you really take a step back and look at the big picture when it comes to sports, really the communities, which I come from, where there aren't a lot of opportunity, people put everything into sports. And for me, I was no different. I put everything into football. And so it was like, if it wasn't for football and the blessing, with prayer behalf, I don't know what it would have been. I don't know what it would have been. So I see that a lot in the communities I come from, and that look like the communities I come from. It's just like the youth are all in on athletics, and it's a sad catch-22, because if you make it, great, but if you don't, what else is involved in your skill set? How have you bettered yourself as a person? So that's part of why I'm doing some of what I'm doing, and trying to be a voice for, just a different narrative as it relates to, underserved communities and what those opportunities look like.
Wow. No, it's great. I want to hear more about that. Derrick Morgan, our guest right now on Unpacking It, former Tennessee Titans linebacker, plays college football at Georgia Tech. And so we talk about, okay, your perspective on football. You spent 9 years in the NFL, and we love talking sports on the show, but we also love talking faith. And so as you look back on your career, how did your faith grow during that season of life, and how did just your relationship with Jesus change throughout your time in the NFL?
It really it grew as I grew as a man. I grew as a man because of my relationship with God, and when I started to really prioritize my life and make God my centerpiece, I started to change, and I would say a lot of that came from thinking that I had all the answers. Coming into the NFL, having that adversity strike, early on, it really shook me up and was like an intersection in my life in which I had to stop living so selfishly and only living for myself, and realize that I was not in control of everything in my life. A lot of things were outside of my control. And a lot of it was because I was outside of a relationship with God. I was just kind of living for myself. Through the adversity, through having my son at 22, I started to really reorganize my life and reorganize my priorities and my values to match, what I had been taught growing up. I grew up going to church, and, I had somewhat of a relationship with God, but really was surface level. It didn't start getting real to me until I became a man and started getting hit with adversity. And I just kind of went back to my roots and started to cultivate that seed that had been planted in me, from a youth. And so that, to me, the adversity sparked my journey on, into developing a real relationship with God. Like I said, the cause and effect of that was, I started to change, and I started to change for the better. And I seen the fruits in every area of my life. It was a necessary transition and transformation that was birthed out of adversity.
Oh, that's huge. Derrick Morgan, our guest right now on Unpacking It, and you mentioned just kind of this idea of cultivating your faith. So what did that look like? What were you doing, and what were maybe you experiencing that really was cultivating your faith and giving you this passion and desire and willingness to really seek the Lord even during times of adversity?
I always tell people, for me, it was the fundamentals. Am I praying every day? Am I in my word every day? Asking God for advice on certain decisions before I make them. Am I kind of getting still enough to hear His voice? Am I in a church? Am I in a small group? Just certain fundamentals of the Christian faith that have to be activated, right? And so I started with those things, right? And just started to kind of build out habits and routines and disciplines around those things. And, going to Bible study, when I was with the team, and, just trying to be intentional about how I was mentoring younger players and sharing my testimony and, praying for opportunities to do so. So I think that, and just kind of what I was filling my spirit with. Was I listening to the right type of music, and was I watching crazy stuff on TV, and was I still going out and drinking, and so all these things that I had to kind of shed from and recreate myself and to create a new reality in my life. And a lot of those convictions came from just the fundamentals of praying and being in a relationship with God, and certain things that I wasn't even aware of, that I was doing and participating in, started to become real obvious things in my life that I needed to stop doing. So out of that, and really started to increase my self-awareness on the things that were detrimental to me in my walk, in my faith, and really just starting to be intentional with how I was living my life and what I was spending my time doing.
Amen. Gosh, that's a tremendous perspective, and really appreciate you sharing all that. That's awesome and encouraging to hear. Derrick Morgan, former NFL linebacker, with us on Unpacking It. And so you mentioned earlier you've got a passion to reach communities and similar communities to what you grew up in. And so how does your faith inspire you to be what you kind of label yourself as, an impact investor? And you've got the Kingdom Impact Fund. So tell us all about it and just kind of how your faith drives you to want to have this impact.
Yeah, so I really think that we are called to be responsible with our resources and be good stewards over our resources. And, for me, a lot of the motivation into what I'm doing came out of the fact of wanting to make a difference and to use my resources for the betterment of others. That started with, different philanthropic endeavors and charities and donations and all those things. And, the more introspective I got about it and started to really think and to see man, is this really making a difference, and started to educate myself on different ways money and capital and resources could be used to better communities and those who were underserved and overlooked. I started to come across impact investment. Mind was had to shift. I was so in the frame of thought that said, oh, well, I can do my charity and my philanthropic stuff over here, and then my money over here that I invest, who knows what that's doing, but it's making me money. And so when I started to wake up and educate myself on what my money was actually doing, a lot of the stuff that it was invested in didn't really match my values. And so I started the process of taking that money that was invested in things that I didn't really understand or wasn't aligned with who I was, started putting it into more meaningful investments that I could understand what it was doing. I could see a tangible, positive impact, and it was changing lives for the better. And I've been doing that over the past several years, and now this program called Opportunity Zones came out. And when that came out, that basically incentivized investment into these urban and underserved and, impoverished communities. The caveat here and the rub is that the money that's coming into these communities is incentivized by taxes, tax incentives. But a lot of the money that's coming in may not care about the same things that, I care about, you care about in terms of equality and positive impact on the community. And so when I started to research it, I'm like, man, I'm not a big fan of the program because of how it's set up. But I was like, you know what, I might as well get in and do what I can to be a voice, and because it's going to be done with or without me type of thing. And so I started to say, hey, look, to my team and, my partners, Kendrick Whittington and Brendan Doherty, was like, hey, look, let's really start to build this thing out and do what we've been doing over here in a silo, but do it more at a larger scale. And so the projects that we're working on have a double or triple bottom line return, where you're making a financial return. It's an investment, but you also have a social impact and sometimes an environmental impact. And there's a way to go about investing in these communities and do good while doing good. We've taken on that approach in our different markets in which we're focused, Atlanta, Nashville, the Philly area, and Austin. And so we've been really focused on intentional, meaningful, responsible investments in these communities and creating an inclusive approach that has all of the stakeholders from all the way from, the high net worth individual who's investing all the way down to the community member whose community the money is flowing into. So we're really embarking on this holistic approach and inclusive approach to make sure that investment is done in an equitable way.
Wow, I love it. I love the intertwining of it and just the approach. It's very, it seems effective and just a great idea. So thankful to hear that you're doing that and encouraged by that. So keep up the great work. The website is kingdomgroup.com, and Kingdom is spelled KNGDM. So kingdomgroup.com. You can find out more about it. He's Derrick Morgan, and man, Derrick, really appreciate you being a part of Unpacking It today. Thanks for coming on to share, what God's doing in your life now after leaving the NFL, and congrats on a great 9-year career with the Tennessee Titans.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me on.
For more information about the show, our events, and other resources, visit unpackinit.com. That's UNPACKINIT.com. We hope you are encouraged, inspired, and challenged by what you heard today. To support our show and Unpacking It Ministries with a financial gift, visit unpackinit.com/donate. We look forward to unpacking sports, faith, and life with you again next week.